But we're going to have Isabel Oakeshott through. Isabel, welcome to the Independent Republic, the new, shiny Independent Republic of Mike Graham. You were up in Manchester for the Tory Party conference. We spoke on a few occasions. I mean, I can understand, Kevin O'Sullivan was just saying there he thought the speech was quite impressive. I'm not sure it was. He didn't touch on things like crime, which I would have liked him to do, but he did touch on smoking, and he's kind of become some kind of anti-smoking zealot.
I mean, there was nothing on tax either, and that is one of the key issues for the Conservative Party. Right. How is it that they have led us into a situation where we have the highest tax take for 70 years? Right. So I think a lot of people would have liked to have heard something on that. And I think part of the problem with that speech, and by the way, I did quite enjoy it. You know, there was a lot to talk about from that speech. It was like a spectacular fireworks display. Yeah. The trouble with fireworks displays is that they fizzle out and there's nothing in the next day, there's nothing there except little bits of ash on the floor. So, for example, on the NHS, another of the huge issues facing the country, there was really very thin gruel. You know, he said, we've got a workplace plan or something like that. Well, what big wow.
Well, all of that, yeah, because, I mean, he seems to have convinced himself that if he somehow does this ludicrous cigarette business, which nobody really understands anyway, I mean, I don't really know how it works, that one person who's 1 year older than the guy sitting next to him can smoke, but the other one can't. You know, in the end, he seems to think that it's going to cut cancer deaths by 25%. I don't see how the two things are connected.
Well, I think I'm actually going to surprise you on this. I really like the smoking ban. I'm a massive anti-smoker. I've never tried a cigarette in my life.
Really?
I find it disgusting. I hate the smell of it. I hate what it does to people's teeth and their skin. I hate it around me. It's weird when you go to other countries and you find there are sometimes people still smoking in restaurants. I hate all that. So whilst I'm very anti-nanny state, like most small C Conservatives, this is one I can get behind. However, I confidently predict this is never going to happen, even if you can get it through the House of Commons. And we've already seen there's a huge rebellion brewing. He said that the Prime Minister said that his own party will have a free vote on it. Right. So a lot of them will be very opposed to this, not because they're smokers, but it goes against the grain of who they are as Conservatives. So I think he's going to face a huge rebellion from his own party. There'll be plenty of people on the Labour side. I know they've said officially they're supporting it. Plenty of people on the Labour side won't like it either, because for a lot of people, smoking is one of the few pleasures that they have.
And it's legal, you know, it's not illegal. And if you wanted to make it illegal, that would be something else. But the problem for a lot of people in places where you can't afford to buy cigarettes, but you do smoke, there's an awful lot of black market cigarettes on sale, and they're a lot cheaper, and that business will probably just grow.
Of course it will.
If they can't be getting their cigarettes in the regular shop, they'll go and get them from the guy selling them out the back of a car.
Completely. So even if he can get it through the Commons, there is no way this is going to happen before the election. You wouldn't be able to get it through the House of Lords. The House of Lords is full of old buffers who like a cigarette. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Although it's interesting down there, isn't it? Because I was down there with Claire Fox one day, who smokes, and we wanted to go out to the balcony.
They wouldn't let you smoke.
And you can't smoke in.
They don't want you setting the House of Parliament on fire.
Well, you can't.
Blundering around, drunk
Well, I
people.
don't smoke anymore. I mean, I smoked for 30, 40 years, probably. Ridiculous amounts of cigarettes. And I used to have an office where, you know, practically everybody smoked in it. I remember when I worked for the Daily Express. And, you know...
Smoking over your computer.
Smoking over the
old
computer,
days,
sharing cigarettes around. But you can't smoke... You can only smoke in the House of Commons terrace. You can't smoke in the House of Lords terrace, which is a kind of a strange anomaly. So we had to sort of gingerly make our way between the two balconies.
Like naughty schoolboys.
And then we were then told, well, you can't come in. I said, hang on, she's a lord of the land, literally. But she wasn't allowed in to have a cigarette. So, I mean, I just don't see how you can in any way make it part of the structure of the laws in this country. Are they going to run into you know, sort of tobacconist shops, as they used to be called, newsagents, and say you can't sell them to this guy?
It's really problematic. You know, again, why, if you're going to do that, then why not crack down on alcohol abuse, which causes, I don't know what the figures are. I mean, they're clearly massive. You know, the cost of alcoholism and, you know, excessive drinking is huge. You know, that's also linked with cancers. And then what about all the people who are openly smoking marijuana on the streets of London?
Another thing.
I mean, is that just going to be able to carry on? Because the police at the moment turn a blind eye to that. It's absolutely
Well, we've
everywhere.
seen what's happened in America. You know, so many states in America now, it's
awful.
legal to smoke marijuana.
And it's horrible.
And it's not legal practically. If you smoke a cigarette anywhere, you get sort of, you know, lifted off the streets and clapped in irons.
But I like the radical thinking. I'll give him that. I think it was a good plan. But then a lot of the small print, you've got to look at the small print. This is a bit like a budget.
Yes.
Where, you know, you get your amazing headlines on day one, and then by a few days later, the whole thing begins to unravel. So take the policy on the reform of A-levels. And I think a lot of people can agree that aspects of our education system are pretty archaic.
Yeah.
I don't think our children are being taught what they need to be successful and confident citizens in the 21st century. So he wants to reform A-levels, he wants to amalgamate them with more practical degree subject courses, so there's not a discrimination between vocational and academic. And he wants to introduce a system which is a bit like the International Baccalaureate. So you do 5 subjects and you've got to do maths and English. That did not go down well when I told the kids at home that.
Some schools already do that, but they're sort of very much in the minority, aren't they?
It tends to be like the IB system. That's not going to be introduced under his plan until the 2030s.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you need 10 years?
I mean, nothing really that he said yesterday, I think, is going to get him any extra votes. You know, the A-level thing isn't going to play for anybody really in particular, even people who care about their children's education. I mean, I've got a son currently just starting his A-levels, and I don't care about it. Secondly, the cigarette tax thing, or the cigarette ban,
it's going to annoy a lot of people.
It's going to annoy an awful lot of people. HS2, which was the main event, I suppose you might say, I'm glad that you decided not to do it.
I wish you could have scrapped the whole thing, but I suppose you've been left with a load of railway.
I was left scratching my head yesterday thinking, now, what has he actually said here? So he said that there's still going to be a railway line from Birmingham to London, which is called HS2, but it's not going to be any quicker than the current train.
No.
And there's now going to be no fast train to Manchester at all, except for the one that's already there.
What is the point?
So, what exactly is happening? I mean, are they not now going to Old Oak Common, and they're now coming to Euston?
But I also weirdly, I don't actually think there's any votes in it. I
No,
mean, you know, all these political figures up north are all kind of crying their eyes out and wringing their hands and acting like this is the worst travesty that's ever happened. Nobody on the streets of Britain, if you go and ask them what are the key things you'd like this government to fix, I guarantee maybe we should do it. Send someone out on the street and say, what are the key things you want fixed? Go up north. They're not going to say, oh, I want HS2.
Right.
Are they?
And they might not even say, I need a train to Hull.
I think what they're going to say is I actually want a roof over my head and to be able to afford my shopping and a few luxuries. And thanks, please don't take my fags away, because it's the one thing that cheers me up at the end of the day.
It's the one thing that cheers me up, gets me through the day. I mean, I got a text from somebody yesterday who said, you know, there's not much point in giving us any trains up in the north of England if everybody's too scared to go out. You know, because it's too dangerous. If you're not attacked by an XL bully dog leaping at your throat, you know, you're going to be stabbed to death by somebody in London. I mean, you know, he didn't talk about crime at all. But let's talk about the COVID inquiry, because, you know, you and I have had many conversations.
I'd love to talk about the COVID
inquiry. And, of course, I mean, one of the things that his wife didn't say yesterday about Rishi Sunak was that he doesn't know how to use a phone, because, of course, some of his WhatsApp messages, something you're very familiar with, Isabel, have disappeared as well. So everybody's got WhatsApp messages that are not going to be appearing.
How disappointing. So Rishi Sunak's WhatsApp messages with Matt Hancock I do have, but they're a bit thin on the ground. I mean, there's quite a lot in there, and they would have, you know, we would have covered all the best stuff.
Yeah.
Plenty in there, by the way, of discussion about how they're not going to be able to do the 40 new hospitals that they promised in 2019 because the money's not set aside. And I think that's a really important story, because it goes to the heart of political lying.
Yes.
You know, misleading
because
voters.
This was a message that was repeated over and over again, wasn't it, by Boris Johnson in particular? You know, we're building 40 new hospitals in the present tense.
It was absolute twaddle. I mean, I can tell you they fell over themselves in these WhatsApp messages to try and make one happen in Boris Johnson's constituency, but never mind anyone else. So look, I think this whole thing of politicians promising things or pulling the wool over people's eyes, saying we're going to do this, and then actually, you know, someone has to read the small print to see we're actually going to do it in 2050. And by that time, it's going to cost you 10 times what we said it was going to. That's really important, that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the COVID inquiry, some really interesting stuff has come out this week. For example, that 2-metre rule, that whole thing where you had to stand on a yellow patch on the floor, all absolute nonsense.
Right, twaddle.
I wanted to come out with a stronger word. You know, look, people should still be angry about this.
Yeah.
You know, the bossiness with which those rules were enforced. The fact that
totally.
even on the streets, we were given lanes to walk on pavements, and some of those wordings are still there, and still there's an awful lot of this detritus that's still around. You know, bits of bloody, what do you call it? Excuse my language.
That's right.
You know, anti-back everywhere and signs up about COVID.
Yellow and black tape all over the place.
There's quite a kind of hangover from all of this.
Oh, totally. Well, one of my pet peeves now, as I say to people all the time, is this habit that people seem to have formed of queuing up to go to the pub bar. I don't know if you
Instead of actually going along
the bar
and fighting with your elbows, and if you're me, you're small, so you get in there.
Well, it was a kind of a rite of passage when you were a teenager.
Yeah, completely. Shove everyone out
of the way. You
way.
have to learn how to get your £20 note noticed, whatever it was. But
Leaning over as far as you
I've
can.
noticed it around this area in particular.
They now queue.
And the people are standing in a queue.
As if it's Pret and you're buying a coffee.
As if you're buying a coffee, one behind another.
Sad,
and in some cases, even giving themselves like a metre distance. People have said to me the reason for this is because these are people who have only grown up in a drinking culture during COVID.
Well, I would say sad times because you used to be able to chat up the people on either side. Maybe you'd get a free drink.
Well, I go round, which is great news for me because I just go round them.
I think you
go straight to the bar and get a drink.
Knock them all over, don't you?
Well, they're all just in a straight line. It's the most ridiculous thing.
Like dominoes.
Yeah. But now, I mean, you're absolutely right to say it, though, because people are now conditioned to be told what to do.
Yeah.
And they quite like it, which is really weird. I mean, one of the things about the smoking is that, you know, it might work in New Zealand, but look what they had to go through during COVID.
Yeah.
And they were quite happy to put up with more restrictions than we were.
Yeah. Well, as we're seeing, you know, all the things that you and I suspected and this fine station highlighted at the time, people like Julia Hartley-Brewer and yourself, day after day, pointing out that this stuff is insanity.
Yeah.
And we all got castigated for it. And guess what? Actually, as it turns out, people like Patrick Vallance were writing in their private diaries at the end of the day, oh my goodness, I'm paraphrasing here, Downing Street's in a complete mess over this and are, I paraphrase, making it up as they go along.
Yes, I mean...
Choosing the bits of science they want and they don't.
I hate to say it, but, you know, we told you so again.
Now and again, it gives us some pleasure to be right,
it does,
doesn't it? In fact,
absolutely.
It always gives us pleasure to be right.
I always take pleasure in it. In fact, I claim victory at every single chance I get. One final thing for you. Dominic Cummings, a name from the past. Apparently his name is being bandied about in certain circles, suggesting that Rishi Sunak's going to make a comeback for him, available in Downing Street.
Can I just come in here, Ray?
Yes.
Hello, Rishi, if you're watching. Seriously bad idea. No good ever comes of it.
No.
The guy's bright, he's brilliant in his own world.
Yeah.
He does not translate into any kind of harmonious functioning of Downing Street.
Yeah.
It would be a disaster. I can't see it happening. If Rishi does that, then good luck to him. The disaster that will then follow will be all on his own shoulders.
It will be. And, of course, you know, nobody knows what he's doing now, Dominic Cummings. For a while, he was doing this incessant kind of, you know, ridiculously long threaded tweets of hundreds and hundreds of words.
30,000 word tweets.
And you'd be going, you're just sitting in your basement doing that. I had this image of his wife sort of shouting down, dinner's ready, Dominic, you know, can you come upstairs now? You've been down there for 2 days.
I think she's busy writing slightly more concise pieces for other publications.
For the Spectator, yes, absolutely right. Well, listen, Isabel, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. We'll